Hello and welcome to the first webinar in the Healing from Trauma series. These webinars are designed to make trauma-informed care training accessible at a time and place that suits you. I'd like to start by acknowledging the original custodians of the land on which I'm recording this webinar and the land on which you are watching. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present and welcome all Aboriginal people. My name is Alison. I'm a senior psychologist with the Links Training and Support Team with the Department of Communities and Justice. Today, I'll provide you with helpful background knowledge and introduce you to the impact of trauma. The information in this webinar relates to kids of all ages, from infants to adolescents. Please be aware that there are 4 webinars in this series, which can be accessed on our website. Watching all 4 will best support your learning. Please note that we'll be talking about some topics you might find difficult. It's important to look after yourself as you watch and be aware of any feelings that arise. If needed, press pause and come back later when you're feeling more able to focus. If you find any topics particularly difficult, please reach out and talk to a support person, your caseworker, or manager. A traumatic experience is one that threatens a person's life or sense of safety, or the lives of people close to them. It leads to an overwhelming sense of fear, helplessness, hopelessness, or horror, and causes intense physical responses such as increased breathing, rapid heart rate, upset stomach, and dizziness. I'd like you to take a moment to think about the types of traumatic experiences the kids you support have experienced. You may be thinking of experiences like beatings, sexual abuse, abandonment, neglect, domestic violence, starvation, and removal and placement away from family. Events may be considered traumatic if the person is directly affected, if they witness the event as it happened to others, if they learn about a person they love being a victim of a traumatic event, or if they experience extreme repeated exposure to the details of traumatic events. This is known as secondary traumatic stress and can affect those supporting kids in out-of-home care. We'll look at secondary traumatic stress in webinar 4. Let's look at the different types of trauma. Acute trauma includes time-limited events that have a beginning and end, such as dog bites, car accidents, and natural disasters. They're often single event occurrences. This does not mean that the effects of the trauma are time-limited, just the event itself. Intergenerational trauma is trauma that is transferred from first-generation survivors of trauma to later generations. It is where personal or historical experiences continue to have a negative impact over several generations, including connection to culture, parenting practices, and mental health. Chronic trauma includes ongoing repeated patterns of trauma such as physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, domestic violence, and neglect. Complex trauma is a type of chronic trauma. It includes multiple traumatic events that begin at a very young age, perpetrated by the child's primary caregivers, those adults who should have been caring for and protecting the child. It's important to remember that kids can experience more than one type of trauma. Approximately half of all kids in the general population have experienced one or more types of trauma in their childhoods. The majority of kids in out-of-home care have experienced complex trauma. The most important takeaway from this webinar series is that when supporting kids who've experienced trauma, the quality of relationships is key. Without a foundation of emotional connection, it'll be difficult to use any intervention, tool, or strategy successfully. Take a moment to consider the skills that are important to have when supporting kids in out-of-home care. You may be thinking of skills like patience, not taking things personally, and the ability to manage strong feelings. Supporting kids who have experienced trauma requires a specialised approach. Many of the parenting strategies that we use with us as children, or that we may have tried as parents ourselves, may not be as effective with kids in care. The strategies discussed in these webinars will complement your current strengths and enhance your skills in this area. In New South Wales, there are approximately 17,000 kids in out-of-home care. Of these, approximately 40% are Aboriginal. For Aboriginal kids, the experience of trauma is often complex and compounded by experiences of intergenerational trauma. Linking Aboriginal kids into their community, land and culture is important for connection and healing, and we'll explore ways to do this throughout the webinars. If you're supporting Aboriginal kids and you yourself are not Aboriginal, it is vital that you seek help to ensure you are meeting their cultural needs. Cultural differences can make experiences of trauma more complex. When supporting kids from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, it's important to gain an understanding of their culture. Trauma and emotions may be expressed in unfamiliar ways and may be harder to identify for someone of a different cultural background to the kids they support. It can also take longer for kids from different cultural backgrounds to feel connected to the adults supporting them, and they may feel even more isolated than other kids in care. Until they become familiar with the culture of their new household, whether it's similar to or different from their cultural background, kids are likely to feel particularly vulnerable. Where kids who've experienced trauma identify as Aboriginal, come from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, or identify as LGBTIQ+, their trauma is likely to be more complex. When supporting kids from diverse backgrounds, it's important to consider how their experiences, culture, background, disability, or sexual identity further complicate their experiences of trauma. You should also consider what you might need to think about when supporting kids with a different cultural background, sexual identity, or belief system to yourself. Remember that current events and the things kids hear or see in the news may be troubling. References to Aboriginal or gay rights, religious issues, images of war or refugee camps, and natural disasters may trigger a trauma response. When kids have experienced trauma, reminders of this trauma may trigger re-experiencing states. These states affect their current ability to cope by impacting awareness of self and environment. They also cause kids to experience the intense emotions and physical responses of a survival response. It's important to note, during times of threat or danger, kids' normal coping strategies may not work. If they cannot calm themselves and no one in their environment can help them, they can quickly escalate into a re-experiencing state. So what do survival responses look like? I'd like you to picture you're taking a walk through bushland and you're having a beautiful day out. The sun is shining, you can feel the warmth on your skin, a soft breeze is blowing, and you can hear a small creek flowing nearby. You feel at peace. But then, from nowhere, a large black dog blocks your path and starts to growl. As you slowly walk away, the dog lunges forward and bites you before its owner can take control. 1 week later, you're walking through the park and a large black dog on a leash is walking towards you. If you can walk past the dog without experiencing a negative reaction, chances are you are not experiencing ongoing trauma reactions to the day you're bitten. But there may be some who, when they see the dog on a leash, experience a fight response. This includes agitation or frustration or irritability. Some may experience a flight response where they need to move quickly away from the dog. Others may freeze on the spot and be unable to move. The original danger has passed and this dog is on a leash, but the survival response remains. Survival responses happen when our body senses that we're in significant danger. They're often displayed in one of 3 ways: fight, flight, or freeze. When faced with perceived threat, survival responses drive us to fight the danger, flee from the danger, or freeze in order to stay safe. Think about kids you've supported and their survival responses. The sort of behaviours that indicate they're experiencing a fight response include hitting, kicking, throwing, spitting, screaming, clenched fists, and glaring. Behaviours that might indicate they're experiencing a flight response include restless legs and feet, shallow breathing, darting eyes, fidgeting, running, and pacing. A freeze response may be indicated by behaviours like holding of breath, shutting down, feeling unable to move, and daydreaming. When kids enter a re-experiencing state, all mental, emotional and physical systems are engaged in the survival response to help overcome the perceived threat. The response is often immediate, extreme and outside of their control. During a survival response, it's hard for kids to behave calmly and think clearly. Now we're going to focus on the brain's interaction with the body, since the body and brain work together to respond when kids feel threatened. There are three parts of the brain that play a role in a survival response. The cortex, which is involved in higher level thinking and manages planning, reasoning and complex decision making. The amygdala, which detects fear and processes emotions. And the thalamus, which processes sensory information received from the body. It's important to know that our five senses process information from the outside world. When we detect danger, strong chemicals are produced in our brains that bring about a survival response. In these situations, our bodies respond quickly. So why is this important to know? When kids sense a threat to their safety or the safety of someone they care about, their brains just react. They can't focus on the content of words being spoken. They don't analyse details because in an emergency, every second counts. They can't make good decisions. They lose the ability to use the thinking part of their brain. It goes offline and is not as effective as it should be. Instead, kids focus on what their five senses are telling them, such as the sound of a person's voice, the look of a person's body, the intensity of eye contact, and the feel of a person's touch. Their sense of smell and taste are also heightened to read and respond to the threat. So what is happening when kids feel threatened? Their higher levels of thinking shut down, the ones that involve planning, reasoning, and problem solving. These things take place in the brain's cortex and prefrontal cortex. When higher level thinking shuts down, what takes over? The more automatic parts of the brain where the survival response system is located. When kids feel threatened, this simpler system takes control of their thoughts, feelings and behaviours. Under threat, kids are controlled by the fear part of their brain and the thinking part is unavailable. We can use our hands to model this response in the brain. It's also a good way to talk to kids about what is going on for them in the survival response. The thumb represents the emotional part of the brain, or the fear centre, while the fingers represent our thinking brain. Most of the time, the thinking brain is in control and keeps the fear part of our brain in check. Under perceived threat, we flip our lid, exposing the fear part of our brain. When this happens, our thinking brain is offline and the fear part takes over. We're not thinking, just reacting. Once the perceived threat passes, our thinking brain slowly regains control. We begin to calm down as our fear centre is brought back in line. I now want to walk you through what happens in our brains when our senses detect a threat. Imagine that you are driving home. Suddenly you notice a red object speeding towards you. In a split second, you take a quick inhale of breath. You experience a sense of pending danger or risk. Your attention immediately shifts towards the red object. Your eyes become aware of the direction the object is travelling. You feel your hands gripping the steering wheel. You sense how fast your car is travelling and hear the sound of another car's horn beeping. Your body responds by sending more blood to your leg to help it move quickly to the brake. You focus your eyes on the rapidly approaching object. In these brief moments, you are not making choices, you are just reacting. The threat decreases as you realise the object is a truck, that it is slowing down and that it will stop safely, causing you no harm. You relax. As the threat eases, higher level thinking resumes and you can think clearly again. Of course, all of that, the alarm, the shutdown of high level thinking, the switch to automatic responses, the return to high level thinking happens quickly in seconds. When our brain detects a threat, it reacts in 8 to 10 milliseconds to drive our emergency response system. These types of near misses happen in life. Many of us can continue without even remembering a short time later that we were frightened. But for others who repeatedly experience intensely frightening situations, the fear remains. Our experience of a scary event can be shaped by both our response to that specific situation and similar situations in the future. When kids repeatedly see distressing things, such as their mother being hurt in domestic violence, or have frightening experiences like being left in their cot for days, their brains are trained to shift from the thinking part to the fear part. These shifts happen very quickly and often without kids being aware. If scary things keep happening, the survival response becomes an automatic pattern in which the brain does not realise the danger is over. At this point, the survival response switch is broken. People respond to what is happening around them based on how their brain assesses the environment. We are constantly looking for signals of safety or danger. We know that in kids who experience repeated abuse or neglect, their survival response is overused at the expense of the thinking part of their brain. For kids who've experienced dangerous or terrifying situations over and over, the survival response becomes hardwired. It becomes their primary way of reacting. The result is that they begin to perceive threat in situations where it may not exist. It's important to remember that when faced with a reminder of past trauma, kids can't accurately determine if they are truly at risk. Their brains have been hardwired to react as if they're in danger, even when they may not be. When exposed to ongoing or intense levels of threat, survival responses can become a patterned response. With overuse, survival responses can be triggered by simply being reminded of past trauma. We'll look more at survival responses in the next webinar. Thank you for watching webinar 1 of the Healing from Trauma series. In the next webinar in this series, you will learn about a child's trauma responses and being a detective to discover trauma triggers. You'll also find out about working with the child support team to develop interventions that prevent re-experiencing episodes. On our website, you'll find all webinars in the series and a range of other resources. If you'd like more information on trauma, you may benefit from attending Healing from Trauma training. If you're a carer, talk to your child's caseworker about training opportunities. If you work with kids in out-of-home care, speak to your manager, internal psychologist, or therapeutic specialist. Thank you.